What's up guys, Jay's 2 cents here, and they're working on stuff out in the alley, and which is perfect because I'm working on some build lists for you guys here. One of the things I've really put off the last 2 years is doing any actual price points of parts lists. I've done one recently, was like, what can you get for $1,000 on like paper, and then we did one like $1,000-ish build at Micro Center at a time when prices were really inflated, which meant that you took a severe hit in the quality of components you got for that same amount of money. Well, now the prices are back to normal, pretty much back to normal. I want to see exactly what we can get for $1,500. So I have 2 parts lists here of exactly how I would spend my money if I were shopping at that price point. EVGA's Z690 classified and Z690 Kingpin motherboards are built with extreme overclocking in mind. With multiple power modes designed for sub-ambient and LN2 cooling along with robust overbuilt VRM setups, the Z690 classified and Kingpin motherboards should be an obvious choice for extreme overclockers everywhere. To learn more, click the sponsored link in the description below. So I said we have 2 builds here because of the fact that I want to try and give people some options. Options for if you want to run an Intel system or an AMD system. So basically the Intel system I have paired with an RTX GPU, and the AMD system I have paired with an RX GPU from Radeon/AMD. But you can mix and match, and we'll kind of go through some pairing options and ways that you can kind of mix some things around at the end. But we'll start off with the Intel build here. For the CPU, I chose the Intel 11700K, not 12th gen. The main reason for that is the fact that I'm trying to stay off of DDR5, and I'm not trying to pigeonhole ourselves into a DDR4 12th gen motherboard, which at that point, one of the selling points of 12th gen is DDR5. And if you're not gonna go with DDR5, I don't feel like it's worth the inflated cost of 12th gen just to completely strip one of its feature sets away right off the bat. And the fact that you can't update that motherboard to DDR5, you have to buy a whole new motherboard, it just didn't seem to make cost sense. Not to mention at the $1,500 price point, you're not exactly shopping for the highest end stuff anyway. But the 11700K still gives you 8 cores and 16 threads, so it's still, like we talked about in my video recently where you don't need 24 core, 48 thread CPUs. Most people don't need that. In fact, most people don't even need 8 core, 16 threads. But it's fast, it's over 5 gigahertz. It doesn't take a massive amount of power to run. It's 12th gen that got really powerful in terms of power requirements. 8 core, 16 threads, plenty to live stream, video edit, photo edit, just general computing, multitasking, it's plenty. Keeping it cool, I have it paired with the legendary Cooler Master Hyper 212 Black. Right now, at the time of making this video, it's $49. Sometimes it can go as high as $60. I've seen it go as low as $40. So it's got a lot of fluctuation in that price point. But if you didn't want to run the Hyper 212 Evo, you could actually look at that V-True cooler that we've showed a bunch of times that performs very similar. But this is the black RGB edition. So as an RGB fan, remember what I said, RGB should not be something that you're actually actively looking for. If it comes with the product that you buy, perfect, it's a little bonus, but it should not be the thing that you're shopping for. But the Hyper 212, it's black, it looks good, it doesn't have any bare copper showing in silver, it's just all blacked out and it looks good with any build. For the motherboard, I actually paired it with the MSI Mag Z590 Torpedo Wi-Fi. It's funny, one of the things I look for in motherboards is what are the reviewers saying? Not reviewers like us, but the people that are reviewing the product on like Amazon and Newegg and Micro Center and all that. What are they saying? And this board actually has really, really solid reviews on Amazon. And by the way, all the pricing that we're mentioning here is Amazon. I think I need to mention that. But the reviews are 4.5 stars with like 400 reviews if you count the Wi-Fi and the non-Wi-Fi version, which are the same motherboard, just one's Wi-Fi, one's not. It's all black, it doesn't look ugly. It's standard ATX, it's not a eATX, which is gonna limit the amount of cases it could go in. It's just seems like a really good all-around motherboard. And my rig here at the studio now has been running an MSI board on 12th gen for a while, and I haven't had any complaints about it. So I would feel confident based on those reviews recommending this motherboard. Has PCIe Gen 4, which is something that's nice to have with 11th gen, because that's when Intel integrated PCIe Gen 4. So you can have fast storage options for your NVMe or PCIe Gen 4 graphics cards if you just want to think you're getting something for that. There you go. For memory, I chose the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro C16, or it's C16 timings, 16 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz RAM. RAM is interesting because of the fact that you could absolutely save some money by going with cheaper RAM. For instance, the alternative here, if you wanted to save 27 bucks, would be spending $52 on the teamgroup Vulcan non-RGB at 3200 megahertz. The difference here just has everything to do with the reliability that I personally had with the Vengeance RAM from Corsair. But again, the prices are so close together now to where unless you are really at the absolute limit of your budget, I would end up going for the nicer set. And RGB is a nice to have, not a need to have, but the particular RAM that I have in here is RGB. The Vulcan, Teamgroup Vulcan is not, so you could save 27 bucks there. And you're probably never gonna notice a difference. I didn't go with faster RAM because from 32 to 36 is a pretty big jump, like 50 bucks in price. And from like 36 to 38, it's like another $25, $30 in jump. So you'd be paying $180 for the set of RAM instead of $79, which is what this is. So why pay more than twice as much for the RAM when you're really not gonna notice a difference on Intel with those memory speeds, unless you're doing very RAM intensive tasks. For the GPU, like I said, we went with RTX. We're left with about $500 budget in this build, or a third of our budget, which is kind of one of the things that I do. One of the ways I split up my budget when I'm doing a build is I set aside about a third of the budget for the graphics card alone. This allowed us to be able to get the EVGA RTX 3060 Ti XC Gaming. This is an entry-level card, meaning it runs basically a reference board, not Founders, a reference board. It's got the EVGA XC dual fan cooler on there. It's got no RGB or any of that stuff. It's completely no frills, but we have it in here. We've used it. It is solid. I have no complaints about it. It's not a massively overbuilt cooler that's gonna drive the price up unnecessarily, which I talked about in a previous video. It is literally just a black brick of a 3060 Ti that gets the job done. No complaints whatsoever. The PSU now, because we are running 11th gen, we don't have to be crazy with the power requirements. So I paired it with the EVGA Supernova 850 watt gold power supply, the GA gold power supply, for a couple of reasons. One, if you look at the reviews on Amazon, tons and tons of reviews, and it's over 4.5 stars on average. Secondly, it's got a 10-year warranty. It's gold rated, which means it's gonna have better quality components inside of it. It's got a 150 millimeter fan with 0 dB operation, so the fan will basically turn off when the power supply is not under a huge load, keeping the noise and the dust buildup down. 10-year warranty, 850 watts, which means plenty of expandability in the future in terms of going with a better graphics card. You can go all the way up to like a 3080 Ti with this card and be fine. I wouldn't go 3090 or above necessarily, or even 40 series based on the power requirements we're seeing, because now you're gonna need like 1,000 watt or beyond. But this power supply will last you, and that's the point. But it's honestly that 10-year warranty and its user reviews that has me recommending the GA series. Storage. I recommended the Crucial P5 Plus 1 terabyte Gen 4, up to 6,600 megabytes read speed. It's honestly the drives we use the most around here. We have done a lot of partnerships with Crucial. Yeah, full disclosure, I mean, we have done partnerships and sponsorships with them. They are not sponsoring this video. They have not had any sort of indication. They don't even know we're making this video. We just really like the P5 Plus. It's fast, the controller stays cool. We've not seen crazy fluctuations in speed ups and slowdowns. I've got 2 of the P5 drives in my personal rig that I just showed you guys that I did a build on. I'm running Crucial P5s on my system at home. I believe my system that I built here, that's 12th gen, also has it. I use the Crucial P5 stuff, the P5 Plus, because it is just rock solid and fast. And because it's PCIe Gen 4, we will get, full speed running on the NVMe PCI Express or M.2 lanes with 11th gen Intel. If you wanted to save a little money though, you could save about $19, because that drive is $127, by the way. 1 terabyte PCIe Gen 4 Crucial P5 for $127. If you looked at the price of that a year or two ago, you'd be paying north of $250 for that same drive. $127. You could go with the Western Digital Black Gen 4, which actually caps out at about 5,150 megabytes per second on Gen 4, so a little slower controller. It's $109 versus $127. Me personally, given how much I've used the drives and I've had 0 issues with any of them, I think it's worth the extra 19 bucks to get the faster drive and then just the reliability that we've come to rely on with Crucial. I don't feel like $19 is make or break here. So I personally would opt with the faster drive. You're not gonna notice the difference between 5150 and 6600 in your day-to-day operation. I promise you, you will never, ever notice a difference. It's one of those things like a car and a dyno. Can you dyno test and feel 30 horsepower difference if you're already at like 500 and above horsepower? Probably not. Will it show up on a dyno? Absolutely. Will you notice it? Not really. So that's the same thing with the drive here. For the case, Corsair 4000D Airflow. It's a tempered glass case. It comes with 2 of their AirGuide RGB 120mm fans. It's the exact same case that I actually used when my youngest daughter built her first computer. She has a white version, but they come in black and white. The price of the case to its performance makes the 4000D the absolute go-to, in my opinion, because it's about $79 for the case for any mid-tower case. It fits a full ATX motherboard. It'll fit a long power supply. I mean, the 3060 Ti XC gaming is not very long. It'll fit in this card, or this case, no problem. Room for 3 intake fans on the front, 2 exhaust on the top, and then 1 on the rear. So you could have 6 fans, 3 intake, 3 exhaust, plenty of cooling. Which leaves us a little bit of money actually here. And the way I chose to spend that, and I have this listed here under additional, is a 3-pack of Corsair SP RGB Elite. Now that's a $70 or about a $75 pack of fans. That's the only component I specifically sucked? No, I didn't suck it out. It's the only component I went looking for RGB just so that it could match the other RGB fans. Now, the reason why I didn't actually choose the quote-unquote AirGuide fans that you find in this case is because those were like $160 for a 3-pack. So they're not gonna be the exact same fan, but they are gonna be RGB. Now, there is a caveat here. You can save money. You can save about $35. If you're willing to give up the RGB on the case fans, just set, because remember, this case comes with 2 commanders in it for controlling lighting and stuff. Not 2 commanders, I'm sorry. It does come with a commander to control those front lights. The 3-pack of fans from Corsair also does come with its RGB controller, and then IQ can operate them differently. You can make them pretty closely match. But if you're willing to just set those fans to white, you can get an ML or maglev bearing SP120 fan from Corsair as a 3-pack for 35 bucks. Let me tell you something. When I had those maglev white LED fans in Skunkworks, they were $35 a piece. That is a deal. We are talking $11.50 thereabout per fan. So if you now added up the stuff I said you could save some money by, you could save 27 bucks by going with the Vulcan memory. You could save 35 bucks by going with the ML120s. And I said SP120s or ML120. And you can save 19 bucks by going with the WD Black versus the Crucial P5 Plus. You'll have $81 to spend somewhere else. You could potentially get a different case you like more. Keep in mind, no cases come with all the fans basically filled in, so you might be having to buy some fans at some point. I still prefer to have plenty of airflow. I tried to see if that 81 bucks could get us another tier of a graphics card. Like, could we then go from a 3060 Ti to like a 3070? No. The 3070s are still in the mid $700, which puts us well above our $1,500 budget. In fact, the total as is $1,539. So we're a little bit over. And then tax and stuff aren't included in this. I cannot account for all your tax situations. So we're talking about the price of the component, not what the government wants to stick its hand in. So $1,539. If you just changed the fans, you'd be $4 over budget. But I chose the RGB fans just to make a match. I think RGB is a nice to have, not a need to have. But you can definitely make a concession there by going with the white ML120s. Set the other fans to white in the case. Set all the other stuff to white that comes with RGB, and you're done. We compared the prices too of 3060 Ti's just 3.5 months ago, and the card alone was over $1,000. The 3060 Ti by itself just a few months ago was over $1,000, making this build absolutely impossible to do. This build would have costed north of $2,000 to maybe even $2,300 because at the time, everything was a little more expensive across the board. In fact, the one thing I feel right now is a little more expensive than we're used to seeing is the price of power supplies right now. And I think that's because of raw component material cost. They're a little bit higher than I'm used to seeing. But for the most part, everything is extremely reasonable. MSRP on the CPU, MSRP on the motherboard, MSRP, just about MSRP on the graphics card. It's still up a little bit. But if you go to like PC part picker and you put in this exact graphics card and you see the trend of pricing, it has just plummeted, which is what we really want to see here. Now let's go ahead and move on to the AMD build. I want to caveat by saying the cooler, the power supply, the SSD, the case, and the additional fans, I left the same on this build. Those are parts that I honestly feel like scrimping on those did not save enough money to make us be able to really increase, say, the CPU or the graphics card. In fact, the caveats here, or not the caveats, but the concessions here that I'm going to mention actually added up to $99, or we'll just say $100, which again was not even enough to get us another tier of graphics card. We couldn't go higher. But 5800X, for the CPU, I did look at the 5800X 3D obviously, but that's a $600 CPU. And although it is being advertised as the fastest gaming CPU on the planet, it's not worth $600 to a $1,500 build. You can't do that. You can't spend more than a third of your price on just the CPU and then still have enough money for anything else here to matter. Not to mention, unless you're running a really high-end graphics card, although it does have 3D cache, it's not gonna uplift a mid-range card unless the graphics card itself is being held back by the CPU enough to even notice. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. But the same Cooler Master Hyper 212 and all of that. The motherboard though, this time, I chose the Gigabyte X570 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi. The reason why I didn't choose the counterpart to that same motherboard for Intel was, again, the reviews. The reviews on this Gigabyte board are extremely positive with hundreds of reviews. However, when I looked at basically the exact same Aorus Elite motherboard on the Intel side, it was only 4 of 5 stars. Now 4 out of 5 stars is still not bad, but when everything else here was either 4.5 or 5 average, a 4, that's 25% worse. I know reviews don't really work that way, but I basically moved on and considered this board for AMD because it was extremely through the roof, and then the MSI board for Intel had a much better review average. But it has all the features you want. Again, PCIe Gen 4, it's got Wi-Fi built in. Both these motherboards do have Wi-Fi. If you get the non-Wi-Fi variants, you save about $10 more. It's up to you if you need Wi-Fi or not. I just tend to include it. I never know if I'm building for someone if they need Wi-Fi eventually. I just include it. But the memory on here is a little different. I chose the Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro again, 16 gigabytes of 3600 AMD optimized. So it's about $20 more than the Intel set. However, it's AMD optimized. And the reason why we want AMD optimized is everything to do with the way that AMD's Infinity Cache accesses memory versus something that is XMP and then certified to work on AMD. There's a difference between certified and optimized, and I want to make that very clear. Also too, I chose 3600, although ideally I would love 3800. It was out of our price point. I would love to get the Infinity Fabric up to 1900 megahertz, but at running 3600, it means we can run an 1800 megahertz Infinity Fabric, which we all know helps AMD as a whole. So same amount of RAM, a little more expensive because of the fact that it's faster. I didn't write it down here, but one thing that you could actually do if you wanted as well is, well, actually I did that back. I did the same thing. You could also run teamgroup Vulcan, 3200 megahertz memory for $52 versus 99, and that gets you $45 back into your pocket to spend on something else. I personally, having run enough AMD rigs to see the weirdness that can happen with RAM that's not quote unquote fully supported, would prefer to have an AMD optimized RAM set than an XMP profile that has an alternative DOCP profile for AMD to run. There's a difference between running versus optimized. The graphics card here, I chose the Xfx Speedster RX 6700 XT. Now let's talk about the 6700 XT versus the 3060 right now. The 3060 Ti, excuse me. On average, in all the reviews that we've checked, mine, user benchmarks, Guru 3D, it is on average 10% slower than a 3060 Ti. So this build is on, like I said, designed for the person that's like, screw Intel, screw NVIDIA, I'm Team Red all the way, even if you're willing to take a performance hit because you're unwilling to support those other brands in any way, shape, or form. Then you give up about 10% performance for roughly the same price graphics card. In fact, the MSRPs on 6700 XTs when they first came out was higher than a 3060 Ti, yet slower. But again, it depends on what games you're playing. There are games that are AMD optimized. If you are going ray tracing and you want ray tracing in DLSS, I would personally pick the 3060 Ti for 1080p and 1440p gaming over a 6700 XT. That's just because of the improved and more matured RT cores versus the RT accelerators that you find on AMD. But this is still an extremely solid option if you are just like, I refuse to give my money to NVIDIA, I want AMD. This is a solid choice. The Xfx Speedster is a triple fan card. Still the cheapest one you can actually get, and also does not have RGB. So that would make a lot of people happy. It's gonna run nice and cool, and this particular cooler is not bumping up the cost of the price of the card at all. So you don't have to worry about this being one of those things I talked about where if you get like a big Strix or something, Strix card, and then you got a $100 premium in the cooler, that didn't make a difference. But other than that, exactly the same things that I mentioned in terms of things to give up. So the difference that makes it $99 versus $81 on where you can have some concessions to save money is the fact that the RAM being $52 is $45 cheaper than the RAM, which was I guess $97 that we were talking about here, whereas it was $79 for the Intel RAM that we talked about. So that's where the extra 20 some odd dollars comes from right there, or 17 or $18, whatever it is. But that's honestly right now, no joke, if this were my money, and this was the price point that a customer came to me with and said I had $1,500 thereabouts to land. Sure, that one came up to $1,522, where the Intel is $1,539. If you have a hard cutoff at $1,500, theoretically saying tax doesn't exist, there are ways to save a couple of bucks here to keep it under that. I think most people can come up with an extra $39 or $22 at this price point if you need to. But if somebody came to me and said, Jay, I have $1,500 bucks to spend on a system, right around there, how would you do it? If they said I want an Intel rig, that's what I would do. If they said I want all AMD, this is what I would do. And what you guys need to do now is sound off in the comments below on how you feel about these parts. The nice thing about this, all of these parts have great alternatives. There is no parts list that anyone is gonna fully wholeheartedly agree with. You're gonna have someone that says, no, I want a Noctua cooler. Or someone that says, no, screw crucial, I want the Samsung 980 or 970. You know, you're always gonna have those options. So I'm really curious as to what the parts list would be if you guys were spending $1,500 US dollars. Sorry, Australia. Sorry, South Africa. Sorry, anywhere else, I guess. I know prices really suck, especially VAT. If you got VAT, you should fight that. I don't know how, but 22 extra percent because you live somewhere, that sucks. Anyway, it's rough, I know. But I'm just glad to see that pricing is back down to a real reasonable point where now if somebody told me they had $1,500 to spend, I don't feel like they're getting a potato that would cost $400 a few years ago. Prices are finally back to normal. You'll see more build guides, you'll see more parts lists, and you're gonna see us spending some more real money to build systems like this and maybe give them away or something. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Sound off down below how you would change this list if it were yours. And if you think I got something just egregiously wrong, you're gonna tell me anyway, so I don't have to tell you to do it. But now if you do it, I'm telling you to do it, which means you'd only do what I told you to do anyway.